G'day folks, we're back. It's Lunch and Learn and I'm Greg. If you haven't met me before, then welcome. If there are any first timers, let me know in the chat. Hey, I'm here for the first time. And tell me where you're from. That's always interesting. We're back building our budget and forecasting and model, our budget, forecasting and actual model. That's what we're doing. We're building it in Fabric. Welcome Abhishek, he's a first timer. We are going to, so we spoke a little bit last week about what the model's going to look like. We created a report and then we published that report the simplest possible way into our brand new Fabric workspace. And that's where we're up to. We spoke a little bit about two value streams, the value stream of DevOps, which is the publishing of content value stream in our Power BI world. So when we create content in Power BI and we publish it up to the service, and we're going to try and use DevOps principles to make that as good as possible. And then we spoke about a second value stream, which I think of as like the thing that turns DevOps into DataOps, which is the entry to insight value stream. That's the path our data takes from the moment it gets entered into a system from our source systems all the way through to when we create a report or something insightful out of that data. The things we're going to talk about today, I've got my pen today on my Surface laptop, so it's kind of fun. I can draw things on the whiteboard, so look out. We haven't had this before at Lunch and Learn, and let me tell you, it's dangerous. I love drawing on whiteboards. We're going to talk about version control today. Version control. Version control is important because of lots of reasons. I'm sure you know if you delete something, you don't want to lose it forever. So we'll talk about version control. We're going to talk about using DAX to test our model and how we might do that. We're going to talk about the publishing process and how we can make that better, which leads us into things like workspaces and what is CI/CD, which is a DataOps, DevOps term. One of the core kind of things that people implement as a part of their DevOps/DataOps situation. So that's what we'll talk about today. Not probably less Power BI data manipulation stuff. That'll probably, depending on how much we get through this week, we'll probably be doing more of that next week. We'll get some data sets in on our budget, accounting, forecast side. We're setting up the workspace right now, right? And we want to try and do it in the best possible way. I also want to explain why I'm doing these things as we go for people that aren't familiar with DevOps and DataOps. I'm just going to say DataOps from now on, not both, with DataOps principles, because you need to know why we do these things, and each thing has a specific reason for why we do it, and it's really interesting to go into those things. Well, it's interesting for me, and hopefully interesting for you. So that's what we'll talk about today. Hooray! So let's start with talking about version control. So when we're building Power BI solutions, so we have, I'll start opening things and get my environment set up as we go. So I'm starting to open Power BI desktop. I'm going to open my Power BI environment, which should I say Fabric environment these days? If I go to app.fabric.com, I assume I get to the same place. But it doesn't matter. app.powerbi.com still gets me to where I need to go. I may be on a different screen right now, but don't worry, I'll bring it over in a sec. I've got my Fabric Friday workspace. This is the workspace we created last week. Here she blows. Right. We'll talk about a task flow. Actually, we might use task flows today because task flows are cool. We've got a budget versus actual report that you may remember that we created last week, and it's very boring. Why is it very boring? Because we didn't actually put anything in it. All we did was we added a logo, we put a title, we did a little bit of work with ChatGPT to get to pretend to be our CFO to tell us what to do. The only thing this report does is every time I refresh it, it updates this number here to tell me when I refreshed it. That's literally all it does. And it says built by Greg Nash, and there's a link to my LinkedIn. That's like literally it. There's nothing on here yet, but that's okay. We're going to update it as we go. Now, the way that we did this is we created a Power BI report in Power BI Desktop and we published it. Did the simplest possible version of the publishing lifecycle. We didn't do anything fancy. The problem that we have, just getting Power BI Desktop up and running. The problem that we have is that this is great if we want to do this. And actually what I might do is download the PBIX file from here, because I don't actually think I have the PBIX file. Copy of my report and the data, or copy of the report with a live connection to the data. We want a copy of the report without data. So we'll get our PBIX file. So this is one way you can do things, right? Is that every time you want to edit this report, you download the latest version of the report from the workspace. That means, why do we do this, right? And this is where we start to talk about versions, right? Because the version that sits on a PBIX file that sits inside my files that I published up might not be the latest version of the report. And the reason why that might not be the latest version of the report is because of this button. I can edit the report up in the service, right? We all know this. So if I click the edit button and then I create things here, don't want Copilot right now. And then I save this report by going back into reading view and hit save. That's now a different version of the report. And my PBIX file that I've got saved locally is not changed. It's still the original. So if I go back to my PBIX file and publish over the top of this, these changes aren't reflected. And so the question that you have to ask yourself is when do I want to be able to change these things, and then what is the process that we need to do to follow to ensure that overriding somebody's work doesn't happen. Okay. And that really boils down to what process are we going to follow to ensure that when we build stuff, that changes are made in a reliable way. So there's a few different ways you can kind of approach this. If you're dealing with reports, and I'd be interested to get feedback from other people that work in the industry as well, like how do you kind of approach this? What are the scenarios where we allow people to hit the edit button in the service? I'm going to open that up as a question.
When I forget to click the little I button to hide the filter pane.
Yes. You can. So when you forget is when you allow them. And that's the thing, is that you probably almost never, if you're in an environment where you're building reports for other people, you probably almost never want to allow people to edit reports in the service, especially reports that are properly built, right? I can't think of too many scenarios where you would allow, particularly on a master report model like this, them to build reports in the service. Matthew says
so
never. That's right.
One caveat or one example I've had is where I've had a group of end users who were good enough at making visual changes, but they didn't really understand kind of the back end. So instead of dealing with title changes and stuff like that myself, they would just go and edit just the production version of the report and do that. Now, that was definitely risky, and it's certainly not best practice, but it does save you from having to go and republish the report. I guess that's another thing, is if you've got incremental refresh with a large data set, you won't be able to republish from local if you need to make a quick change.
Yep. And this opens up this whole world now where we, as people who are building reports for other people, need to come up with architectures that are going to support the fact that we want to control certain aspects of the report, such as the semantic model and the measures and the relationships and all the hard bits that you don't necessarily want to give to users. But then you might have a user base that says, oh, well, I want to be able to create a pie chart on top of my report. I want to create a whole new version of a report. And that's where we kind of graduate to the second kind of version of these types of architectures. And if you think about the second version of this kind of architecture, and I'll close this report now, go back to our workspace. Would be to, instead of us providing access to the master report, would be to allow people to create a report based on the master semantic model. And so you go create report here. And now we have a second report that's pointing to that model, but this model isn't, it's only got refresh date time in it, but this model isn't is no longer exposed to that, and person stuffs up this report, then good luck to them. So in the Power BI world, in the Power BI desktop world, you can do that as well. We just create a blank report for now. Oh, actually, I can just say get from other sources, I suppose.
And in the future, with the changes that are coming down the pike, we'll be able to actually edit the models from the cloud as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So if we click Power BI semantic models here, we connect to a Power BI semantic model. And then we look for and find my semantic model that I created. This will connect to the semantic model in the cloud. And lo and behold, there's the refresh date time over here on the right-hand side tells me that I've got the right one. But we've lost all of the changes. Like we've lost the logo, we've lost the title, we've lost all that stuff because this is a brand new report now. So we're creating a new front end on an existing semantic model that lives up in the cloud. And I can publish this report. I could say, this is a new report. It's really small, I know. Maybe we'll make that really big. Oh, what's happening? It like deleted it or something. Oh, it's doing that. Yes, okay. It's doing that thing where you get the blue things out. I'm confused. Here's a test report. 28. Look at all these panes I've got open. Save my changes. I call this report test u01.pbix. Try and save it. Prod reports. I don't think I'll save it there. Doesn't seem right, does it?
That's all.
Let me just find a reasonable location to save this.
Yeah, as a side note, why have they, for Power BI, decided to proof of concept a completely different save menu?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things, we don't know the mysterious ways. Okay, call this test report.
As something that we should cover down the line, if you feel it fits within the remit, is how to manage all the build permissions and stuff as part of this kind of tiering of reports as it moves down.
Yeah, I think that's where we start to get into some interesting areas. So yeah, I would like to go at stuff like that. All right, so I saved it. It's called This is a Test Report, and now I'm publishing it. To our Friday, Fabric Friday. Select. Publish, publish, publish. Success. If we go back to our Power BI, back to our Fabric Friday, don't save that report. And now we see we've got a second report in here. That is, but we don't have a second semantic model because both of the reports look at the budget versus actual semantic model. Okay. And so that's kind of what's happening. Okay. So that's now we've got to the point where we've got one semantic model, two front end reports. Those two reports both refer to the same semantic model. Things are starting to get a little bit more complex, but this is really only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how we want to manage our versions of reports and things like that, because you start to see how sprawl starts to happen, and you can start to see how we need to manage potentially multiple versions of reports. So the next question that I potentially will have is, what happens if I open up my report here in test report land? Yes, I enjoyed Power BI. Thanks. Thanks for the feedback. Excellent. So I break the report with my breaking change. Then now it is broken text. And I go, yep, everything looks great. Haven't really checked, but seems fine. Everything's fine. And I'm going to hit publish. And then I click the save button, right, as I publish. And I go, pop that in the Friday, Fabric Friday. Test report, select. It's got the same name, test report.pvix. Great. Replacing the report. Yep, yeah, that's what I want to do. Replace the report. Cool. Cool. Got it. And then I go up to the service and I go, awesome. I've published my new report. Let me have a quick look at it. And I look at the report. And oh, it's broken. I broke the report. What do? I have to go back to the previous version of the report. What? Okay, how am I going to do that? I can't download this file that's broken. Okay, so I'll go back to my where I saved it last. So I'll just open that folder. Find that file location. Okay, so here I am in my little folder, and I've got test report here. Awesome. Okay. And you open that one up, and well, no, that's also broken, right? Because that's this one here. So okay, and it hasn't synced to the cloud yet. So hopefully I can get previous versions. Let's see if I can see the previous versions. And there's no previous versions available. So I think I might have accidentally broken my report forever. Right now, so we don't want this to happen, obviously. Just gonna mute some peeps in the chat. Sorry, everybody. Oh, I can't see the mute button. Mute all. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to talk, but I'm just clicking the mute so we don't have some background noise. Okay, so that's whoops. We broke our report forever and we don't have a previous version. And it didn't sync to the cloud yet. So that could be a good thing, because maybe there's a version in the cloud. So let me go, and because I put everything in OneDrive because I'm sensible, I guess. So where is this? This is marketing, lunch and learn. Let's go back and see if I can open this in the cloud. So I go to OneDrive, view online. Oh, don't have permissions to access my own OneDrive. That's interesting. Must be signed in with a different account. Let me just. Oh, now I do have access to my own OneDrive. Created 3 minutes ago. We look at the version history. There is actually 2 versions. So lucky for me, I could actually go back to the previous version. And so rule number 1 of version control, even if you're doing the most basic stuff, is save everything to OneDrive and or SharePoint, because that will automatically maintain version history for you and you'll be able to roll back if you accidentally break everything. If you don't have that available to you, then you are going to have to be careful about how you then. The fallback thing is to add the date or the time or the version number or new/old/new, whatever it is, to the end of the file name. And this is what people have been doing forever, right? You create multiple versions of things. No one ever seems to use version history in OneDrive. They always just create, report number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then add extra bits and pieces. So this is fine. You can do this. And there's actually another technique you can use, which is kind of interesting. And I actually haven't done this in a really long time. It'd be interesting to see if it still works. Has anyone done this recently where you add add a report from OneDrive? I don't even know how to do it anymore. You'd have to create a new blank report and then add the source from OneDrive, I guess. How would I do this? I have to create a report. New report. Oh yeah, here we go. CSV, Excel, pick a publish semantic model. So they have removed the
Greg, I think you're looking. Sorry, are you looking for the upload button? If you go back, you should be able to find it.
Upload. Yeah, maybe you can. Does that work? Is that create the direct link from OneDrive like you used to be able to do?
Yep.
Okay, cool. It was back there, was it?
Yep. So if you go one back.
Oh, upload. Right. You're right. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I hadn't even tried that navigation for like 6 years. So, okay, so here's the upload button. So now I can go into I was in marketing, wasn't it? Marketing. Lunch and Learn, I think is the name of the folder. Test report, there it is. Okay, upload. And now we get another report. And it's uploaded from OneDrive. So the interesting thing about this version, and what I'll do actually, is I'm going to delete all of these reports now, and we'll just talk about. Actually, let me make sure I got budget versus actual before budget versus actuals there. Cool. Okay. So we'll delete this one. I can probably delete in bulk, can't I? But anyway, we'll just delete them one at a time. So one of the interesting things you can do is you can create a little, almost like a, I don't know if you call it a CI/CD pipeline. Oh, it deleted everything because I deleted the thing. That's cool. But you can create a little automatic update process if you use that process. So let me grab my budget versus actual, put it in the right folder. So I'll copy this. In a second, find that marketing folder. Go to marketing, go to Lunch and Learn. One of the weirdest changes Microsoft made with Windows 11 was the fact that the copy and paste are now just symbols and not words. So I've got to paste something. Paste isn't there. It's this symbol here. Oh, can't see it. But yeah, I don't know, so weird. All right, there's budget versus actual. It's been synced to the cloud, so hopefully that's okay. So we can create a mini like CI/CD pipeline with this upload, because I don't know if this still works. So we'll experiment and we'll see if it works. It should. There's no reason why it wouldn't used to. Okay, so here in marketing, go to Lunch and Learn. Find our budget versus actual PBIX, upload that. So we're uploading our PBIX directly from OneDrive. Look at this. It gives me a report, a semantic model, and a dashboard. That's weird. So it automatically created a dashboard based on the thing as well. God, some of these automations is so weird. All right, what does this dashboard look like? Does it actually, it's just a link to the PBIX file.
Yeah, it's just the exact same.
It's just a link to the report. Yeah, okay. And then there's our report.
It's terrible.
Okay. That is terrible. Yep. All right. Not a fan of that, have to say. And
you can't delete it right away either. You've got to wait until it fully uploads before you can actually remove it. And then every time you upload it again, it'll reappear.
Really? Oh, that sucks. Okay, so I got to delete. Will it see what happens? It's also called budget versus actual.pbix. The name of the dashboard is the name of the. That's terrible. All right.
Yeah, I've not seen that before.
Yeah, we deleted the thing. So here's an interesting thing that I hope still works. I don't know if it does. Let me just move task flows for a bit. We'll talk about task flows, but so if I open this now in desktop, waiting. Hopefully desktop will catch up to me soon. Come on, desktop. It is opening. You can see down here. Eventually. All right, it's taken a long time to open, but I'm sure it'll get there. We believe in you, Power BI. What's this? Is this? It's nothing. Okay, so what's supposed to happen? I'll just tell you what's supposed to happen and then we'll experiment with it. Is that when I make a change now to my file, if I open it on OneDrive, theoretically, it will automatically update the report inside Power BI. That's how it used to work. I don't know if it still does though. Is there another upload option? Which is not intuitive. You would think it uploads the PBIX file, a copy of the PBIX file, right? But apparently that's, well, that was definitely how it used to work. So it'd be interesting to see if it still works.
Praveen says in the chat he can confirm that it does.
Does work. Excellent. Thank you. I know a lot of people still potentially use this method. Thanks, Praveen.
No, I didn't know that. That's pretty
Fabric.
cool.
Yeah, it is cool. So when we'll talk about GitHub and all the rest of it, I'm building up to Git. So this is where we're getting to, but this is the simplest way to create a kind of a CI/CD pipeline, if you like, using desktop and the Power BI service. If you go into and check settings and check refresh, it shows OneDrive sync. Oh, lovely. That'll be on the model, won't it? OneDrive refresh. Well, by default, OneDrive files update hourly. Do you want the file to be kept up to date? Isn't that cool? So this still works.
If you go to refresh history, Greg, it'll show you the OneDrive syncs as well. Just on the top.
Here.
Yeah. And then
OneDrive. And we haven't had any syncs.
Correct.
Really. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so, I've got an uncertified connector that I built. So now if I make a change, it might take the full hour for this update. I'm not sure how quickly it updates, but this is a change. We'll check this later and make sure see if it. So I'm not going to publish this. I'm not going to do anything else. All I'm going to do is save my change. And theoretically, oh man, these text box, there's something weird going on. I just want to select this text and make it really big. And save. So I've said the acronym CI/CD a few times. CI/CD stands for Continuous Integration, Continuous Deployment. And the idea is that as people make changes, they publish those changes. In this case, I hit the save button, and then that change is automatically updated to the file in the service. And so the reason why I call this a simple CI/CD pipeline is that these changes are automatically being synced to the place where people are potentially coming in to consume this report. Okay, and so therefore CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. It's very simple, but it removes the extra step. That's right. You don't need to click the publish button. Not that that's a really big step, but the thing that this does is that it ensures that everything's up in OneDrive, so you have version control. You can roll back changes and they will be reflected as soon as the OneDrive sync happens. to the service, right? So you can use that version history in OneDrive and then automatically roll things back if things go wrong. And so this is kind of your simplest version controlled report. We'll see what happens if we close this down. And
hey, Greg, can I jump in and ask a question, mate?
yeah.
The reason I'm kind of asking about like the auto update, I'm just thinking about often when I'm developing reports, unless it's a ridiculously simple change, I could hit save like 20 times in 4 hours, and I wouldn't necessarily want anyone seeing that yet. So is this like a fairly limited use case of where it's kind of okay to just flow through that quickly? Like, it's absolutely done when you do it type thing?
Yeah, this is more for if you've got reports that are in production and you're making changes to them, that are like potentially it's less so during the development cycle where you're potentially making all sorts of, doing all sorts of weird changes and breaking things and all that kind of stuff. It's more for that maintaining existing reports in production to make life a little easier well, it just is it's a better architecture, I guess, is kind of rather than having it all sitting in your C drive and then publishing the reports over the top of each other. That's the.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. I see Michelle's just said as well, you can turn the sync off temporarily for major changes.
And then turn it back on once you're done, which is good.
Yeah, that's a good sensible. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. So there you go. So that is the simplest version of kind of a CI/CD pipeline, and you start to see where that's kind of useful. And this is like, I know, like any of you guys that follow Power BI.tips, Mike Carlo, he strongly he was this big advocate for this method for a long time, and he basically had all of his customers doing it this way, just to make sure that they were doing things in a way that prevented breaking changes from becoming permanent. So that's a methodology you can use to maintain version control, have a simple publishing pipeline, and then be able to do that. And it's kind of cool. So that's kind of the first thing. So we'll see if our change gets reflected in our report anytime soon. We can probably check if it actually gets updated through that through the refresh history, right? Oh, look, there we go. It failed. The data set owner has restricted who can refresh this data set. If you need to refresh the data set, you can try and take it over. Oh, that's interesting. Anyway, I don't know why it failed. There'll be all sorts of weird little things going on there, I guess. It might be that I had it. Oh, look, it's off now. It's interesting too. It turned itself off after a failed update. It might be because I've got it open or something like that. I don't know. I don't know exactly how what the deal is there. Okay. We could investigate it, but I want to move on to other topics. Okay, so that's a little bit on version control, which is great. The next version of that, which we will be implementing, is where we start to get into using repositories, what are called repositories for version control. And there's a few different ways you can do that. You've heard the term Git, G-I-T. That is where we get into that, Git repositories. A tool that I use for that is Azure DevOps. You can use GitHub. Both of those are perfectly fine. And you can sync your workspaces to repositories, and then you can start to maintain versions of pieces. And we'll talk about why did we get more advanced in this? What are the reasons why? And so we'll start to talk about that as we go through this process. Richard says, had issues with OneDrive sync with large files becoming corrupted sometime back. Has anyone had any recent issues? So that's true. I wouldn't necessarily stand by this as the way to do it these days, particularly now that we have GitHub and repos. But it's definitely better than not doing, like having absolutely nothing in terms of these types of approaches. But yeah, there might be some idiosyncrasies, like they always are with everything in the Microsoft and Power BI world. There's always something that you need to kind of manage. Okay, so we'll wait with bated breath to see if that actually updates. Well, I guess if that thing's broken, it might not, but we'll see if it does. It's still syncing to the cloud anyway. That change I made. Cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about then some of the other things we will need to do to build this budget versus actual model. So let me create a copy of this file because I want to keep that one as it is because that's the one that's synced. Create a new folder. Call this Fabric Friday. In here. Paste its symbol. I don't understand why. Okay, and I'll open this one. So the first principle being we want to try and maintain good version control of our files as we go. And by just putting the date on the end of the file is not good version control management, right? there's better ways to do it, so that's the thing. So another good practice in terms of when you're building stuff in Power BI, and this is something I don't think I've ever seen. I've very rarely seen happen. I know one person that's doing it, and we'll talk, and we might even have a look at his blog post on it in a while. Michael. Yes, I'm talking to you, Michael. No, I have no idea how you manage your files, but don't worry, I do it too. Which is a concept in DataOps, which is called test-driven development. Okay, and so test-driven development's really interesting. I think it's something that it's worth thinking about. I don't know if it's worth adopting for everybody. It depends on what your kind of appetite for this type of stuff is. If you're working in a mission critical environment and you've got a large enterprise development team, then I think this is an interesting way to go. If you're building stuff for, for mom and pop operations, or you're just doing bits and pieces, this might be a little bit too, sorry, I've got to really get rid of that uncertified connector. Okay, thank you. No, doesn't like me. Close, thank you. All right. So what is test-driven development? Okay, we'll get rid of our lovely change that we made. So test-driven development is where before you build anything, and I'm talking about measures really, before you write any measures, you write a test to see if the measure works or not. Okay? And so you say to yourself, why would you do this? So the first version of your report is actually a report that has a bunch of broken tests in it. And then as you go through your development lifecycle, your tests go to green, saying that they now work. So let me give you a bit of an example. So I'm going to create we'll just create it as a measure for now. God, what is this? Has this UI changed on me again, or is it I'm just like not used to it and I don't know what I'm doing? Maybe that's the case. I'm going to call this total actual 20, and we'll call it April 2023 equals 23,256. Just a number, right? It's a DAX formula that returns a number. Oh, directed on object interactions, yeah. This lives in our refresh date time table at the moment, but we can fix that up. I might create a new empty table to put all of our measures in, because that's good practice. Who does this? And then my second question, how do you do it? So there's a few different ways you can do it. This is one way. I want to talk about all the different ways you can create an empty table. Okay, so you can create it one way and you can call it metrics. You can't call it measures. So this is illegal. You can't call it measures and you can't call it measure, I don't think. They're both reserved terms, I think. Does anyone call it measures? You can call it metrics.
I call it calculations.
That's allowed, except metrics is the thing. I create the table like you were doing and I call it key measures. Okay, someone calls it key measures.
I call it underscore measures, so it's at the top of the list.
Underscore measures, so it's at the top of the list. Love it. That is one of my preferred ways of doing it. So you can call it underscore measures like this. That's one way to do it as well.
Except now, if you create the empty table, it goes to the top of the list by itself.
I think if it's only got measures in it, it gets a little calculation thing in front of it as well. It gets a little calculator.
But you have to hide the column.
Matt appends measures with the category that it's in. So data measures or whatever. That's interesting. So he has, yeah, like, so he has extra tables. So you can do that too.
I use the display folders for that.
Display folders, yeah, interesting. Okay, well, I'm going to use underscore measures, which is and then you create something with an empty row. So that's one way to do it. And then hopefully that'll load. And I didn't hit cancel or something like that. Wow, Power BI is going super slow. Maybe it's because of Teams. Does Teams just slow down every other Microsoft tool? Because I can't click on anything right now. Yeah, look how slow it took just to come bring that up. Whoa. I've got a hack here that's going to blow your mind if you haven't seen it. A lot of people will have, but this is something that used to frustrate me a lot. And I didn't realize this was that you could do this for a long time. But you know how you can't, like I want to move that into there and you can't? See, you can't do that? It's so annoying, right? Guess what? If you click over here on model view, and then you go, oh man, I've got this semantic model view. I just want the tables, please. Yep. And then you do it. Boom. It moves. OMG. The people who didn't know that are going, what? Right now. Anyway. Okay. And then you hide, and I hide this. You hide this one. Hide from a report view. And then your columns, and look, the symbol changed. Did you see that? Did you catch that? It changed because it's a proper measures table now. It's got calculator on it. So now we have a proper measure thing. Okay, Shelley says started with a single measure table divided by display folders. Yeah, I use Tabular Editor to create and manage measures. That's probably the sensible way to do it instead of doing it this way. But you can do it from model view. Model view is getting better. It's got this new model view here too, right? Look at this. Calculation groups. Bet you haven't seen those before. That's because that's just come in the May update, I think. Tabular Editor, yeah, Tabular Editor is the way to go for sure. Measure management in Tabular Editor is the way to go. Okay, so the other way that you can create this table, because I like doing it this way too. This is actually the way that I don't hit enter data and create the blank one. Because I'm a pro at DAX, I say a new calculated table like this. This is my way of doing it. And then I say underscore measures 2 because we've already got it. Equals a row blank. Oh, we go column. So you do it in DAX. How cool is that? And look, a nice calculated table. So you could do it that way too. Either way, no big deal. I don't think anyone really cares, but that's how I create my blank measures table to put at the top. Many years ago, I was told not to do this by someone at Microsoft. This is literally 2017. I was told this. Don't create a measures table at the top. And I said, why not? That's what everyone told me to do. Like Rob Colley and Avi Singh told me in their book to create a measures table at the top. And Matt Allington told me to create a measures table. Why can't I? Can you delete the unnecessary column 1 in the calculator table? I think the column has to stay for it to be a table. I don't know after we've hidden it whether we can delete it or not. We've got a measure in there now. So what happens if I delete it? Do I lose the whole thing? Dun, dun, dun. No,
you
it
get
works.
you can delete it. I just don't know if you can in the DAX one. My OCD requires that
Oh.
extra column to be deleted once there's a measure.
Yes, you might be right. There you go.
In which
There
case,
is
your DAX option is now
it's
flagged.
inferior. Oh no, Kirsty's proven me wrong. It's not good enough to hide it. I'm with you, Kirsty. All right, I redact all of my years of making the thing using the row blank. Never use that. Create a new table and delete the column. There you go. Things that I think people don't care about and they actually care a lot about. All right, that's awesome. What was I talking about? Oh, they said never do this. They said don't create a separate measures table. Put the measures in the appropriate table down here. And I was like, I'm not a fan of that for many OCD reasons, etc. And they said, and he said, well, the reason why is because it messes up Q&A. And I'm like, I don't care. Q&A? No one uses Q&A. So there you go. So I think it's perfectly fine, and now everybody pretty much does it. I think that's kind of considered the best way to do it. And now we've got Copilot. I mean, who needs Q&A, right? All right. So that's everything there is to know about the mysterious measures table at the top of the thing and putting a thing. Okay, so I created a measure, and it's a very boring, small, ridiculous measure, and it's only one thing. So what is this for? So this is my test measure, and we'll do it in we'll potentially do it in DAX Query View in a sec. So we create a test measure, and so what I've done is I've gone to the business and I've said, hey, what is the correct total for April 2023 for actual? And they said, oh, that's 23,256. Here's the report. And you go, okay, there it is, right? And then you create a second measure, which is much easier now that we've got our measures table. Which is total actual. Now we don't have any data yet, so we can't be and we'll just say 0. We don't know. That'll be the sum of the total, the transaction column, whatever it is, right? I think we're doing P&L, so it'll be, the sum of whatever the thing is, right? And then we could create a third measure, which is and it could be like if total actual equals total actual test green, I'll make it. Maybe we'll just go true. False. We don't need to put the false in. It's implied in an if, but we'll put it there anyway. Our test is false because our total actual does not equal our total actual test. So the concept here is that you speak to the business, you get all of the numbers for what they're supposed to be for a specific temporal period. That's why I said April 2023. Yeah. And it should be something that's not like yesterday, because that could change. It can't be in the month that hasn't already been closed, right? You want it to be a defined, well-defined, well-known. This is if things are right, this is going to what it should be. So we know in April 2023 that this is what the and we don't necessarily have to call it April 2023. You might call it total actual test value or something like that. And then you might put a comment here, which is April 2023. Like that's another way to do that, right? And then we're creating a test against that. So the first version of our report is actually just a bunch of broken tests. So we do this for all of our measures. We do it for budget, we do it for forecast, we do it for total actual, and I'll do this during the week. I'll set it all up so that it is correctly set up for next week. And then as we build our model and then we actually get the total actual value correct, we create a total actual value that measures it against the test value, and this turns to true because now we've got real data in and it's working. Okay. So this is what the concept of test-driven development is. You build the test first, and then you build the solution to fix the test. And you actually build all of the tests for your current version of the report. So if you're building a report that has, for us, what we're going to be doing is actual, forecast, budget. We'll probably have some other bits and pieces measures in there to look at that. We're going to build tests against all of those before we do any development of our model. And then we publish the first version of the report as a bunch of broken tests. We don't share that to the end users yet, but what we're doing is the progress of development is driven by how many tests the thing passes. Okay, so that's test-driven development. Interesting kind of idea. Like I said, don't really see anybody do this, but this is a DevOps idea that I think would work really well in analytics development. Every time I've experimented with it, it's been something that I think it works really well. So and then the interesting thing is that you can use now DAX query view to be able to run these tests without necessarily creating so I just created all those measures separately, right? But now we can actually just do all of these tests in DAX query view instead, right? So we'll create a variable that is our total actual. We'll create a variable that is our total actual test value, and then we'll test those two things, and then we'll create a little table that shows whether it's passed all of the tests. And there's a really great blog post, which I'm going to try and find right now, by, I think it's John Kursky. He talks about using DAX to generate a test table, and I'll find that, and I'll have I'll put a link in the chat for us, because I think that is so he's the person I know that actually does this in the enterprise with his team. And it's an interesting idea. So let me see if I can find that blog post real quick. If someone finds it before me, then put it in the chat. DAX testing. Surely that'll find it. Automated DAX query view testing pattern with Azure DevOps. Ooh, that's really close.
Hey, Greg, can I jump in real quick for a plugin while you're finding that?
Sure.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, I'm new in Melbourne, just relocated from America with 6+ years of industry experience. So I'm looking out for a role in analytics, data, or business. So I have unlimited working rights in Australia and on PR invite received status. So yeah, from the community, if somebody could share any leads with me, I would appreciate that. I can leave my email ID on chat. I have relevant experience and skills and a master's degree.
There you go.
All
Nice
right.
work, Abhishek.
Thank you.
It's pretty close. That's more advanced though. So okay. So let me just introduce you to this blog if you haven't seen it before. I have spoken about it before in the past. He's got so John Kursky. I presented with John Kursky at the Power BI Global Power BI conference online. We did a thing on DataOps. He's got it's currently, I don't know how many parts it is, but this is part 37 of his bringing DataOps to Power BI session, right, of blog, right? So he's got a lot of different things in the blog that go through all these types of techniques. Put the link in the chat for you if you're interested. I think that was literally the latest one. So this is where he's automating the DAX query view testing. But what I want to find is the one where he actually find that. Oh, here we go. That DAX query. Here it is. Here it is. Cool. Okay. So in this, and we'll implement. This is what I'll implement for the next session. Is that we'll implement in DAX query view, and you can see he's using like DAX Studio and stuff here. So he was using DAX Studio to evaluate his things, and now he's moved his DAX Studio tests to DAX Query View. And if you see at the very bottom here, you've got the test name, the expected value, the actual value, and then whether the test passed true or false, right? And so this is this idea of test-driven development. You can build these Power BI tests inside your DAX Query View, and then have this little output table that tells you if it's passed all the tests before you publish it up to the cloud. Okay, and so test-driven development is something that I think is really important and will become more and more prevalent in enterprise kind of development type stuff. So what we'll do for next week is we'll implement. I'll put in together some of the DAX Query View stuff because I don't want you to have to sit through me putting all of these pieces together. So I'll put that test plan together inside DAX Query View inside our report so that we've got our tests ready to go and that we can then start building out our budget versus actual model. The other thing that we'll talk about is integrating. We've spoken a little bit about version control, but we need to now integrate this into a repository, and we need to then sync the other Fabric items that we're going to use. So we're going to not just use Power BI, create Power BI semantic models and reports, right? We need to get data into that. We're going to use Fabric to pull this data in. We're going to also sync all of those Fabric objects into the thing. Once we've done that, we're going to talk about how do we get multiple people to work on the file at the same time, and then what are the processes for doing that. So that'll be part of our development process as well. So we've still got lots to cover. We just about run out of time for today, but stick with me. I promise we'll get to the long lost land eventually. But there is a bit to go through, and I want to introduce these concepts to you in bite-sized chunks. So today we covered why version control and a little bit of a basic version control pattern that we've used in the past in Power BI, and then we've also covered test-driven development and what the purpose of test-driven development is. So we're going to implement test-driven development to start. We'll get our first few simple tests to get our development started. We'll start bringing in budget and actual data. We'll start modeling that up, and then we'll do that in Fabric and start syncing all of this to a repository so that we're saving all of our code in a single place and that we can have multiple people work on it. So that's where we're going to go to. All right. Well, that's it, folks. Thank you very much. It's been another lovely lunch and learn time with you. If you've got any other questions or you want to have a chat, I'm going to hang around for a bit. We'll stop the recording now. So for those on the recording, see you later. And for those of you, we'll see you next week. Thanks very much. All right. Recording stopped.